name is Ryan, and I'll be with you here over the next hour or so as we kind of step through an overview of the Cisco Meraki technology and a pretty extensive demo of the Cisco Meraki dashboard. So it looks like a few folks are still kind of trickling in here, and before we get into the meat here, let's kind of get through some of the introduction material. So again, welcome. This is the Introduction to Cloud Networking webinar. Like I said, my name is Ryan. I'm part of the support team here at Meraki. And just a quick agenda here, introduction, a little bit about Cisco Meraki, and a quick overview of the kind of architecture behind the Cisco Meraki product. And then that's where we'll get into the demo. That's where we'll spend most of our time today. We'll kind of step through each of our product lines. After that, we'll wrap up with a little bit about why cloud networking, a few case studies, and a quick overview of our product families. At the end, we will have between 5-10 minutes or so for a quick Q&A session. We'll kind of look at the more common questions, but I do have my colleague Jen in the room here with me. She'll be taking your questions live in the questions toolbar there, so make sure you take advantage of that. Ask the questions as they pop into your head. That'll give her the most amount of time to make sure she can answer all of your questions. We're also very excited to be able to offer the free access points for IT professionals. So this is our Cisco Meraki 802.11n access point with the 3-year cloud management license included. So there's nothing else you need to purchase here to get this up and running in your home or small business. You can set it up, create your own dashboard account, and we're really excited to be able to offer this because we feel the best way for you to kind of see all the benefits of Meraki to really get hands-on with the dashboard and see the benefits of the cloud management there. If you have any questions about the eligibility details, you can check out meraki.cisco.com/free AP. One requirement here is that we do ask that you contact your Cisco Meraki rep and confirm your shipping information. You can find their contact information in your webinar reminder email, or you can always just call the general sales line and they will route you to your rep accordingly. All right, so just a little bit about Cisco Meraki. We're part of the Cisco Enterprise Networking Group, and we're basically a 100% cloud managed solution. And what I mean by 100% is that we don't just build out the kind of back-end cloud infrastructure. That's not what we're about. That is, our main, kind of selling point there is that you can cloud manage everything. But we do also have our own portfolio of physical hardware. We have wireless access points, switches, security appliances, and even a software solution that's called the Mobile Device Manager. And that's basically a way for you to remotely manage mobile devices. We'll go a little bit through that during the demo. And our goal here is really to take the benefits of a traditional consumer cloud and take those concepts and apply it to enterprise networking. And what are those concepts? Those concepts is that it's very easy to access. You can access your data or information from anywhere that you have an internet connection. Basically, all the software that lives in the cloud is always up to date. New features continually being integrated and developed without having to install anything on each of your client devices. It's also a solution that's basically designed to just work, right? It's out-of-the-box management security, and it's an integrated solution that's integrated with the hardware to make it very, very easy to set up and deploy. And it turns out that this is working really well for enterprise networks, and we're experiencing just crazy growth around here, tens of thousands of new customers, and we really are doubling annually. We've seen that with our recent results here. We're taking that success and investing into new products, new features. You'll see in dashboard, I'll highlight some things that were developed over time. We're always developing new features and reinvesting in R&D. All right, so just to give you a quick overview of what this cloud networking architecture looks like. This is a really simplistic view of it, and basically you can see here you're going to have your on-premise hardware, so whether it be a switch, security appliance, access point, you're going to have those devices deployed at your location. Now, once you plug those devices into a working internet connection, they will establish a secured connection with our cloud infrastructure. Now, over this secured connection, we'll pass management information. So just as an example there, if you go into the dashboard and you change maybe the name of an SSID, or maybe you change port configuration, this management information will be pushed down to the device where that configuration will live. And this is basically one example of what passes over the secure interface. Another example is analytic information. So as data traverses your network, we'll gather information about it if you have those features turned on, and we'll give you information such as what layer 7 traffic information is passing, what clients are connected, all of that type of status passes over the secure connection. One thing that does not pass over the secure connection is the actual user traffic. So if you're a wireless client sitting behind the access point and you go to google.com, of course, as that packet traverses the access point, we will gather information that this is web traffic, port 80 traffic, etc. But the actual packet, destined to Google servers does not pass through our cloud infrastructure. That goes right out your WAN connection, right to Google servers. So it's a very important distinction there. So expanding on this, so you can see that potentially you could have other locations, right? So if you're a large organization, you have your main campus, you have remote branch offices, teleworkers, etc. Each one of those devices will create the same type of secure connection back to the cloud, and the cloud will then aggregate all that information and display it to you in one single pane of glass here called the dashboard. So some of the benefits of the cloud that we were talking about earlier. First one is security, right? So I already mentioned that no user traffic passes through the cloud, but some other security aspects here. We are fully HIPAA and PCI compliant. We take security very seriously, and because of that, we conduct third-party security audits, and even try to do daily vulnerability testing to penetrate our systems there. If we ever do find anything that does need to be patched, we can do automatic firmware and security updates. Of course, you will be notified if there's an update pending for your network, and you can even go in and schedule these yourself now. Another idea here is scalability. So specifically with the wireless infrastructure, our wireless architecture does not require controllers. So as your organization grows, as you need to expand, you have more clients, all you need to do is add additional access points. The cloud has all the scalability there that you need to in order to control and manage those devices. And because of that, even with our other hardware, it's also very, very easy to add new devices or new sites within minutes, right? So you can, I'll show you during the demo how easy it is to create new networks and clone those settings between networks, so you can actually bring up entire new locations with just a few clicks of the mouse. Finally here, reliability. We have multiple data centers positioned around the country, I believe even a few around the world, and because of that, we're able to guarantee the 99.99% uptime. One other very important distinction here is what happens to your network if you lose connection to the cloud. So the first thing here is that the configuration for your devices lives on the devices. So it does not like they need a constant connection to the cloud in order to have any type of function at all. That configuration does live on the device. So that connection to the cloud is needed for updates to that configuration, of course. If you, like I said, if you're changing an SSID or something like that, most of that configuration comes from the cloud. But you do have some local configuration capabilities, and if you do lose connection to the cloud, your LAN will still continue to function. Your wireless access points will still broadcast the same SSIDs with the same settings, the same association requirements. Your switches will still switch frames and have all their port configurations. Your security appliance will still apply its firewall rules, etc. So your LAN will continue to function normally. Of course, during this downtime, your ability to kind of get into the nitty-gritty of the configuration is going to be obviously impaired, but hopefully during this, it'll be a momentary outage there. If it's actual error in our side, right, you lose connectivity to our data center, but your WAN connection is still up, your data is mirrored to any one of our other data centers, and you'll just fail over to one of those. So if you have any other questions here, you can check out meraki.cisco.com/trust. There's an excellent FAQ section there, a ton of documentation about how this infrastructure works. All right, so let's go ahead and get into the demo. So I'm going to switch out of PowerPoint here and just go into Google Chrome, where I have been automatically logged out of my dashboard. So sorry about that. Let me go ahead and get logged back in here. But you can see I'm just logging into our portal, which is dashboard.meraki.com. And we are going to take a look at the Meraki Corp organization today. So this is the one where all of our gear lives. It's where the access point I'm associated to right now lives, and we'll kind of step through that. So here we're looking at the kind of org overview page. This is telling us the health of our entire infrastructure down to each one of our networks. So we can see here that most of our teleworker networks here, these guys are all online. That looks great. Our London office, all of their networks, so they have 2 different networks. 4 different devices, those are all online, and then even our European teleworkers, those guys are online. And then hiding down here, our Sydney, Australia office, they're online. Here in San Francisco, there's something wrong. but that's pretty typical for us because we have several test networks. You can see we have 31 different networks here, several test networks included there, and we do testing and we expect devices to be offline. But you can see here that this would be pretty alarming. If you woke up in the morning, logged into the dashboard and saw this looking at you, you would know there's something for you to do that day as an IT administrator, right? You have a problem to look into immediately. Now, if we expand out here, we can see all of the networks that are within this organization. And basically, the dashboard structure here, our best practices kind of indicate that you should create a new separate network for each physical location. Obviously, if you have one physical location and you want to break up into individual networks from there, that's totally fine. But we do recommend creating new networks for each physical location. So we can see here we have 48 different networks. We can see some aggregate information here, such as how many clients have connected to our entire organization. So it looks like 7,500 clients, passing 33.5 terabytes of data over the last week. If we want to see which one of these networks had the most amount of usage, we can sort here. See our Meraki Corp network had a bulk of that, about 20 terabytes of that, with about 1,500 clients there. We can see some health information here off to the side. So this is showing us the health of this network, over the last week. So for the purposes here of the demo today, we're going to go into Meraki Corp. And we're going to start on the security appliance today. So let's take a look at the appliance status page. So this is an appliance that's called Godzilla. This is our main gateway out to the internet. So it's an MX400 if you're curious about the model number there. And we can see a bunch of information on this appliance status page. We can see some physical information such as the serial number of our device. This is pretty important if you ever need to get support or anything like that. We can see NAT information. So we can see here's our 2 public IP addresses that we're being NATed out to. We can see usage information here, just 1,100 clients, 529 gigabytes in the last day. And we can see our configuration status. So if we ever change something, we'll be able to know if the box has actually fetched that configuration. And then, of course, we have our configured firmware here. So this will actually tell you that an update is available for the device. And it looks like we do have one update available for us here. Off to the side here, we can see some historical connectivity information. So you can actually pan back in time here. Say if we want to go back a day, did we see any outages? It doesn't look like there were any outages. You can kind of go back in time here to see both historical usage information and also connectivity information. Now down here in the Live Tools section, we have a nice little GUI showing you, what ports are in use. And then we have the first Live Tool here, which is Internet traffic. So this is showing us all the traffic going through the device at this moment. This is over the last 5 minutes or so. And you can see there's a key here, Internet 1, Internet 2. So right now you can see all of our traffic is going out Internet 1. And the reason for that is that we're using Internet 2 as a true kind of failover WAN connection. So if our Internet 1 ever goes down, what will happen is the MX will switch over to Internet 2, send the traffic out Internet 2, but also continually monitor for Internet 1 coming back up. So then as soon as Internet 1 comes back up, it'll fail back over to Internet 1. Now the other option here is link aggregation. So if you have 2 different circuits there that you want to aggregate together, we do have a functionality here within the security appliance to do link aggregation, and you can actually specify the ratio. So you could say that this link 1 maybe has 10 megabits of bandwidth and link 2 has 5 megabits bandwidth. So I want you to send 2/3 of the traffic out link 1, 1/3 of the traffic out link 2. We have that capability to allow you to manage that ratio. The second Live Tool here, pretty self-explanatory, DHCP leases. That's showing we are running a DHCP server here within the security appliance, so you can see every single IP address that has been given from that DHCP server. Ping tool, of course, pretty standard test here. Very, very useful if you're not, ever trying to troubleshoot something remotely. You can just log into the dashboard. Again, you can reach this dashboard from anywhere that you have an internet connection. So you could be, on a plane, looking at your network and pinging devices on your LAN here from the dashboard. Traceroute, great way to test your path out to the internet, but also check your maybe DNS name resolution here. We have a separate tool for DNS as well. And then a throughput test is a pretty simple test out to Meraki.com just to kind of test the bandwidth. Blinking the LEDs and rebooting the appliance can also be done from the dashboard as well. So let's take a look at some of the configuration for the security appliance. And this page is going to be a bit daunting, so I do apologize in advance. We do have a fairly complex configuration here on the security appliance. Just know that yours hopefully won't be as complex as this, but it's also a good reminder that we can handle fairly complex networks. So, and why this is complex is just because we have a bunch of local VLANs and we also have a ton of static routes in place. So we can see here that we've come in here and defined all of our local VLANs. So this is anything coming out the LAN ports of the MX. We can see here it looks like we have, I don't know, 7, 8 local VLANs here. This is how you configure your entire LAN infrastructure. So you could click here, specify the subnet mask and set a notation there. You specify an MX IP address there, and you can even assign your VLANs here. Another option here is group policy. So this is very important. We'll talk a little bit more about group policies as we kind of go through the demo here. But group policies are a way for you to kind of customize the network experience for a different subset of users, and one of those subsets of users can be per VLAN. So you can say any client that's associated on this VLAN, they get these networking rules, and that's what group policies can do for you. So you can see here we have several group policies already defined. For instance, we have a bad employees one. I believe this one is actually blocking P2P traffic or something like that. So if we want to say for this subnet, everything on this VLAN, we're going to block P2P service or block BitTorrent gaming, block Netflix, etc. All right, so you've come in and you've defined all your local VLANs, you've defined all of your static routes, and the main purpose of me showing you this page first is to show you that you only have to do this once in the dashboard. So when you start talking about other features, such as our Auto VPN functionality, you'll see that this work has already been done for you. So let's actually go to Auto VPN. Now, just in case some of you don't understand the concept of a site-to-site VPN or the benefits of a site-to-site VPN, I'll just introduce the concept here briefly. Basically, site-to-site VPN is a way of connecting two physical LAN networks together. So using Meraki as an example here, we have our London office, we have our Sydney office, and we want our remote users in those offices to be able to reach resources that we have here in San Francisco, such as maybe file servers or email servers, etc. Now, if they were out in the field and they wanted to hit those internal servers, they'd have to do some type of VPN in. A site-to-site VPN actually makes it so that they can just navigate to those services natively without having to do some type of client VPN. This is actually bridging their LAN segment over to our LAN segment. So with the site-to-site VPN, we have two different modes. The first one here is split tunnel. What that means is that we're only going to send site-to-site traffic over the VPN. And what I mean by that is that, okay, my actual destination IP address has to be for something that's on a remote subnet. Alternatively, it could be full tunnel, which means that regardless of what it is, it's going across the VPN tunnel. If I'm going to my ShoreTel subnet here, it's going across the VPN tunnel. If I go to google.com, it's going across the VPN tunnel. Whereas split tunnel, the google.com traffic would just go out your normal LAN connection. The other thing you can choose here, especially when you're doing a Meraki to Meraki site-to-site VPN, we have two different topologies to choose from. First one would be connect directly to all VPN peers. Now what that means is that my San Francisco office will connect to London, my San Francisco office will connect to Sydney. And also, if I set this up on the Sydney one, Sydney would connect to San Francisco, Sydney would connect to London. So it's basically saying that it's going to create tunnels to each one of the other security appliances within the organization. Alternatively, you can choose hub and spoke mode. So I'm going to say I'm in the the Meraki out San Francisco office now, but say that I'm looking at the London network. If I said the hub and spoke mode, I could actually say that I want this one to just send all its traffic back to the London office. It doesn't need to connect to Sydney or into any of our teleworkers. So obviously we don't have that set up because we want it to connect to all of our devices. Now down here in the local network section, this is the reason why I showed you the setup. We've pulled all that information in here, and all you have to do is come in and toggle this as yes or no. Yes means that this is a remote subnet that is going to be advertised over the site-to-site VPN. So someone in London would potentially be able to hit IP addresses in this subnet, and that traffic would be routed across the site-to-site VPN. A no here means that this is not included, so someone would not be able to ping anything in this subnet if they were in London. So you've already kind of gone into the addressing and VLANs page. You've already put in the work to define all this. Now all you have to do is come in here and say yes or no. And once you save the changes, what happens is that each MX within the organization will take its IP address information, so its public IP, it'll transmit that to the cloud. It'll also take anything that's on this page, toggled yes, and it'll transmit that information to the cloud. The cloud will then build out a master kind of routing table and deploy that down to each of the security appliances within the org. So all you have to do is set this up on each one of your security appliances, and the Auto VPN takes care of the rest. You don't have to worry about phase 1, phase 2 parameters, monitoring the tunnel, etc. Meraki takes care of all that for you. Now, if you do have a third-party device, we do have support for that. There's many services, whether it doesn't even have to be another company's security appliance. You could be cloud services, such Azure VPN here. If you have Amazon Virtual Private Cloud infrastructure, we can do site-to-site VPNs with those non-Meraki VPN peers, and you just specify that information down here below. All right, so another cool feature of the security appliance is a client VPN. You can actually run a client VPN server. So alternatively, like I was talking about, site-to-site VPN means that you don't even have to do any type of configuration on each one of your clients. But if you did have someone out there in the field, maybe this is one user, we do have a client VPN functionality. And basically, it's not much to see here in terms of the setup. You're just going to specify your own client VPN subnet, and they'll be able to connect in remotely there. So that was a little bit anticlimactic, but you can see the setup there. So another feature of the security appliance, and this is part of our advanced security feature set, is security filtering. So basically, again here, this is not going to look like much to in terms of the setup. You basically turn this functionality on, but we have two types of security filtering. One is malware detection. This is a service powered by Kaspersky rules, and the other one is intrusion detection and prevention, which is powered by SourceFire. So this is both of these services are going to scan the network traffic on your LAN segment and also entering it on your LAN and look for signatures that would detect someone is trying to do something malicious. Now with the security, as soon as you turn on these security features, you're going to get this nifty little security report, and it's going to tell you anything that was actively blocked. So we're looking actually over the last, looks like the last hour here, right? And we're seeing that here's all the signatures that were detected and actively blocked. So we can see the actual signature. So these are actually Snort signatures. I don't know if you've ever heard of Snort, but it is a real service. I'm not making that up. It's called Snort, and you can go to snort.org, and you can actually search for these service signatures here and actually see why they detected it as an exploit. So the other thing you can see here is what client was requesting this information, the source address of this information, but also the destination address of this information. So it's very, very nifty in terms of adjudicating whether or not these services are kind of false positive or it actually should be legitimate traffic and you want to go ahead and whitelist it. If that ever is the case, you just click on the signature and choose to whitelist it. That traffic will now be allowed through. One of the other monitoring functionalities here of the security appliance is actually the VPN status. So I mentioned earlier you don't have to worry about monitoring your VPN status, but if you ever wanted to come in here and check and see which tunnels are built and which ones are up and which ones are down, we have this site-to-site VPN status page, and you can come in here and monitor that information. So it takes just a second to load here because it's gathering statistics about each of these. It's not just gathering connectivity information, it's also gathering the latency information and also the last heartbeat. So while that populates, you can see here, basically here's all of our teleworkers, here's our Sydney office and their remote subnets. Here's all of those remote subnets that we toggled to yes on our page. And then down here we even have our London office as well. So one of the last features of these security appliances that we'll talk about today is the content filtering. So you have a kind of traditional web content filter here. This is done with an integration with a company called BrightCloud. They do all of the URL categorization, and we basically integrate with them to pull in those categories for you to select. So you just select in this box here. You can see the very long list of different categories to choose from. And there's some organizations that are going to be a little bit more sensitive in terms of what categories they need blocked. For instance, if you're a school, right, you're going to be pretty strict in terms of all adult content, obviously. But there's a ton of other ones here, alcohol, tobacco, etc. But any organization is going to be wanting to block botnets, spam URLs, spyware, adware. So this is pretty applicable to any organization. A couple other things you can do here with the content filtering. You can do web search filtering, so this will block adult content from showing up in web searches. And once you turn that on, you can actually block encrypted search as well. But this does block most Google services, unfortunately. So that's just kind of the way that the solution was architected. In order to block those encrypted searches from Google, you actually have to block a lot of the Google services. So and then the other thing here you can do, URL blocking. So if you wanted to whitelist specific URL patterns or block specific URL patterns without having to block an entire category, you can specify that here. Now, one of the cool things is that if you wanted to ever go see, hey, are people navigating to websites that are actually being content filtered? And you can actually see that information here in the event log. So there's going to be a ton of information here, but if we kind of filter this out, we can just take a look at the filtering category. And we can see not only the user that was requesting it, but also the URL that they were trying to fetch and which category that block came from. All right. So enough about the security appliance. Let's go ahead and take a look at the switch. So there's not as many things to talk about on the switch. A switch is pretty much a switch. But there's some benefits to using a switch in the Meraki cloud infrastructure. So what we're looking at here is actually a list of all of our switches. We have 48 different switches here in this network. You can see that this page is kind of aggregating information about every single one of those switches. We can see connectivity information again. We can see LAN IP address, MAC address, active ports, what model it is, the serial number, etc. And you can always customize these screens here. You can add in the columns that you find interesting. But let's take a look at one switch in particular. Let's just kind of pick one here at random. So we're going to go into the detailed display of this switch. And again, this is very similar to what we saw for the security appliance, but there's a couple new things. First one would be power information. So it's going to take just a second to load there. But while it loads that, we can talk about the GUI here. So it's, again, the same type of GUI. We can see what ports are in use, and we can actually see devices that are connected to that as well. So we can see all the port configuration. So we can see all of these are set up as a trunk native VLAN 128 here. And down here in the live tool section, we have a couple new live tools to talk about. So the first one here is the cable test. If I wanted to have to test out some layer 1 connectivity information, so if I see an access point that's maybe misbehaving or some PoE device, something plugged into my switch that is not acting as I would expect it to, we can detect if it's a layer 1 issue by running the port test. So this is pretty nifty, as opposed to having to go into your server room and plug in the cable tester on each end of that cable to test it out. You can do it here from the dashboard remotely. A couple other new ones, of course, a forwarding table, pretty self-explanatory there in terms of switches. Wake client, so if you have a client that supports Wake on LAN messages, you can select that here. You can cycle a port remotely here, so this would, if you want to reboot a PoE-powered device, you can cycle it here, so this will just turn off power to the port momentarily and then turn it back on, so it'll power that device back up. Throughput, blink LEDs, rebooting switch, pretty similar to the security appliance there. Now, probably the more useful view of the switch network is actually the switch ports view. So this is actually going to pull in all of our switch ports across every single one of our switches. So we had 48 switches. I think we have just over 2,000 switch ports now. So yep, just 2,100 here. So this is actually showing us the port configuration across each one of our switches. So as I mentioned earlier, you can see what's connected to the switch. This is pulling in that CDP, LLDP information here. And we can see all of the configuration, all of the usage information, connectivity, etc. But one thing we can do here, say we wanted to configure maybe every single port 5 across every single one of our switches. I can simply use the search tool here and type in port 5. It'll pull in every single port 5, 48 of them to be exact, and we can see all of that configuration and actually can edit these all at once. So I can highlight them all here, click on the edit button, and it's telling me that I'm updating the configuration for 48 different ports. I can set all of my configuration here, such as the VLAN information, voice VLAN, native VLAN, whether this is a if this is a trunk or access port, etc. So it's very, very easy to manipulate your entire switch configuration. And just to keep in mind, all these switches are not in one physical location, right? These are spread out all around our building here. So from one single pane of glass, you can manage the configuration of all of those switches. Another thing we can do is LACP aggregation here, so you can aggregate up to 8 different ports. And one thing I didn't mention was back on this view here where we kind of look at the switches. One thing that's pretty cool here is, obviously when you talk about switches, the switch configuration is going to vary from switch to switch, right? You're going to go through and set up each port to have its own function. But say you're going to provision multiple switches, and maybe you have multiple different stores that you're going to be sending these out to. You can actually clone the settings from switch to switch. So if I wanted to say this switch I want to clone the settings to, I can select which ones I want to clone the settings from and hit clone. That'll copy all the port configuration over to that switch. All right, so let's take a look at the wireless product now. So we're going to start on the map and floor plans view. So what we're looking at now is a floor plan of the 4th floor of our building, and we're seeing all of our access points. So these green dots now are no longer, they're not just the networks, these are actual physical access points. So it's showing us where they are in the building. The number indicators are telling us how many clients have connected over the last week. Probably a more useful view here would be to see how many current clients are connected. So let's take a look at that. So this is our kind of lunchroom area, not a lot of people over there yet, and this is our kind of operations and sales floor, so that's where kind of all of our clients are concentrated now. So not only is this a great view just to see at a glance are all my access points online, right? I don't see any red here or gray, meaning we have an access point that's offline, but it's also a great way to kind of validate your kind of RF deployment, right? We can see that the number of clients is pretty evenly distributed in the high density areas. And so, it's a great tool in that sense as well. So let's pick the one that has maybe the most number of clients associated to it now. So let's pick this guy over here. So you can see we can just hover over it and take us to the detailed display for the access point. Again, very similar to the detailed display of the other products. A lot of the same physical information here, but there's a couple new ones here that are specific to wireless. So the first one, channel. So this is telling us what 2.4 gigahertz channel and what 5 gigahertz channel is in use. Connectivity information here. So this is telling us that this is a 1,000 or gigabit connection, full duplex. But here's that CDP LDP information again. We can see what actual port and switch it's plugged into. So if we ever were troubleshooting that layer 1 issue, like I was saying, we can actually trace that back, see exactly where this is plugged into. Again, the configuration status, configured firmware, very similar to the security appliance. But then down here we have some new ones here. Radius status. So we have one SSID that's using radius authentication. So this is checking our connectivity back to that radius server. And then we have VLAN status. So this is telling us our connectivity back to the gateway for each of these VLANs. So if you kept seeing issues like we're seeing right now, I believe this is one of our test VLANs here. So this is pretty self-explanatory for us. But this is also, just basically you can see if there's any one of your VLANs is dropping some type of traffic. Now down in the Live Tools section, there's a couple new Live Tools. First one, current client. So we can see every single client that's associated to this access point, and we can also see the current data going through the access point. So you can see that there's about 7.5 megs of data going through this right now. We can see which one of our clients has been using the most amount of data. We can see what SSID they're using, what channel they're on, their signal strength. So you get a ton of client information here. A couple other live tools to talk about, though, specific to the access point, would be channel utilization. So this gives us kind of a real-time RF snapshot of our environment. So this is telling us that, here's 2.4 gigahertz spectrum. You can see, obviously 11 looks like it's being pretty heavily utilized in this area, and that's a good thing that we're on channel 1. So channel 1 is being pretty not heavily utilized at this time. 5 gigahertz, obviously a much less congested band, and we can see that across the board here. Ping tool we talked about, ARP table, right? So this is just detecting all the IP and MAC addresses that we detected, and then the rest of these tools are pretty self-explanatory here. Then we do have historical usage information here for the access point. So we can see connectivity information, we can see usage information. So if I wanted to go back, 2 days, this is looking at the last 2 days worth of traffic here. We can see not only the usage, but also the utilization. So this would tell us if we had any intermittent signs of interference. All right, so let's take one step back. If we take a look at all of our access points, so this is kind of similar to the switch infrastructure, with this list view of all of our access points and kind of all that aggregated information. But I want to talk a little bit about provisioning new devices. So if you, we're getting ready to expand to the 3rd floor of our building here. So let's talk about that process. What do you need to do to provision those new devices? Is there some complex setup? Fortunately, with the dashboard here, it's very, very simple. All we'd have to do is click on Add APs. Once we click on that, it takes us into our inventory here. Say these were the 10, MR34s that we're going to be, adding into the 3rd floor. I just select the MR34s and click Add Devices. Now, I don't want to do that right now. I'm not sure what these are being used for, but I could just simply click Add Devices. Those then would be populated here in the access points view. And immediately, once they had an internet connection, they would reach out to the cloud, determine what network they're in. So they'd be like, oh, I'm in this Meraki Corp network. It would then fetch the same configuration that lives on the rest of these access points. So within a matter of moments, it will have checked for a firmware update just to make sure it's on the same firmware as every one of these other devices. It will have downloaded the configuration, and it will immediately begin broadcasting the SSID. So it's very, very simple. You've already done the configuration for the network. There's no need to repeat that configuration. All you have to do is add the APs in, and they'll fetch that config. The great part about this, not only is it easy to set up, but it's also very easy to remotely provision, right? If you are shipping an access point out to a remote location, you can have, as an IT administrator, you can have all of your work done here so that all they have to do at the remote location is plug it in. They don't have to do anything else in terms of configuring it. You don't have to worry about each individual location having different settings. You can manage that all here from the dashboard. So let's go back into one of these access points here, the one that we were looking at earlier. I want to talk a little bit about the client information that we were seeing. So we saw this list of the current clients, but what other information did we get? So let's take a look at one specific client. So let's just find one here. This takes us into the detailed display for this particular client. Now, this is telling us, again, some of the information that we already knew, which is the signal strength, the access point it was connected to. But here's some new ones, right? So we can see that this is a Apple Windows 7, so I'm assuming it's probably running some virtualization. I don't think Apple has developed a Windows 7 device here. But we can see it's 802.11ac, capable of 2.4 and 5 gigahertz operation. We can see some triangulation information here. So I know for a fact that this user sits right about here. Oh, no, I take it back. It says somewhere over here. It's very close. The longer you give it, the more access points you have. It'll be able to triangulate that better. Actually, no, I know he sits here. He must be on the move. So there's that information. We can see usage information. So this is over the last day. If we want to say like the last week, we want to see what usage information he has. We can also see application breakdown. So we'll talk a little more about this in just a moment here. But just to wrap up on this page, policy. So we talked about group policies earlier. This is another way that you can apply group policies. So say we saw on here that maybe he was, just as an example, I don't see it actually on here, but maybe he was watching a bunch of Netflix. They can come in here, go to the group policy, and specify that this person is being blocked from Netflix, right? So this is another way for you to apply group policies. Remember, the first way that we talked about was for VLAN. All right, so let's take one step back here then and take a look at all of our clients. So this is actually going to show us all of the wired and wireless clients, but for the sake of this conversation, let's take a look at just the wireless traffic. So this is the wireless traffic over the last day. You can see it kind of peaked up to about 40 megabits per second. Let's take a look at the last week. So we can see, obviously, during the day, peaks up. Weekend, not as busy. We can see the application breakdown again. So we can hover over each of these categories to see, what each value was. But probably the more useful view is if we click on more. It kind of expands this out. We can take a look at their most heavily utilized categories. So obviously, web and secure web being our most heavily used traffic here. But Netflix coming in at number 6 here, about 15 gigs over the last week. I wonder if that's from one particular user or a subset of users. So let's actually click on Netflix, and we can see what each client that used the service was. So we can see that the sales TV was watching a bunch of Netflix. So I don't know how useful that is to me. I didn't know the sales TV had Netflix, but we can see that I used about 43% of the rule here. We can see which client had the most by that as well, and also this particular rule's usage over time. So you can see the time of day that this application was being used. Let's go back to the clients page here, and again go back to the access point clients, and we're looking at the last week. So if we get rid of this, we can see just information about every single wireless client that's come through. So we can see that this Ryan Matza MBA computer here had 18 gigabytes of traffic on it. If I want to search for all my iPads, I can type in iPad, and this will search for any iPads that have connected. I can search for specific names. I don't think I've connected to this network, but oh, there I am. I'm not connected to it now, but you can see you can search for all of your devices here by name, by operating system, I think even by manufacturer as well. So if you wanted to search for Apple devices, you could type in Apple there as well. So this is a pretty nifty search tool. This is also another view where you can apply policies. So say, I wanted to say, my iPads, and I wanted to select all of the iPads and apply a block, some type of policy here. You'd be able to do that here, apply policies. All right, so before we kick back over to the PowerPoint, I want to talk about the last product here, which is Systems Manager. So if we take a look, that's actually in a different network here. So we'll go to Meraki Corp and go to Systems Manager. Now, System Manager is one of our cooler products, and probably the coolest thing about it is its price tag. It's 100% free, so you can use this. Anyone can use this. You can create an account today. I'll give you guys a link in just a moment when we get back to the PowerPoint there, but let's talk a little bit about what this product actually is. It's basically a way for you to remotely manage your devices. So whether that be laptops, iOS devices, Android devices, etc., it's basically a way for you to install an application on those devices. That application will run and gather information about that device in a very similar fashion as the way we gather information about your network, and it'll take that information and transmit it back to the cloud. And not only do you get that usage information, but you also get control of that device. So for instance, let's find my device in here. So we can see here is my MacBook Pro. So I'm not an administrator here on this network, so I'm going to lack certain privileges here. But we can see, the geolocation. This is based on my IP address. We can see, online status when I was online using the device. We can see device storage information. We can see, if you're using this as an asset management system, it's very useful to have things like this in terms of serial numbers, in terms of warranty, etc. Now down here on the commands for OS 10 devices here, basically it's just we can remotely lock the device, we can selectively wipe it, or completely erase it. Now if we take a look at let's take a look at a different type of device here. Let's maybe take a look at, well actually my one was still on there, so if we go back to my name here, we should be able to find my ThinkPad here. So let's take a look at this. So for Windows devices, you maybe have a couple other live tools. First one here, process list. We can fetch any processes that are running on the device. We can open up a command line to the box. Obviously, the device is online, so it's not going to let me do that. But network statistics, we can see all the network statistics. Take a remote screenshot. So this is the device is online. I want to see, what the person is doing, or where, if my laptop was stolen, maybe you can get some other information off of that. You can take a remote screenshot, remote desktop into the device. Shut it down. You can even send it messages. So there's quite a bit of functionality here with Systems Manager in terms of managing those devices. But as an asset management system, it's great. The other thing that you can do with Systems Manager is actually push out profiles and push out settings to your devices. So when I think of pushing out settings to mobile devices, I think of applications, right? So just as an example, say there's a school, or you're the IT administrator of a school. Your school just bought 500 new iPads, and you're the IT guy that gets to spend his weekend pushing out applications to each of those devices. So normally you'd have to go onto each device, download the application, set the wireless profile up, etc. With the Systems Manager, you can do that all at once. So the first thing you can see here, we have the applications that we already have loaded in here, which are the two Meraki apps and this collaging app. If I want to add a new one, I can just click Add New and search the Apple Store for one. So someone already stole my thunder and added the Meraki ones, but I can simply search for Meraki and it'll bring up an R2 apps. First one here, Meraki Systems Manager. This is an app that you can install on the devices that helps you enroll in your Systems Manager network. So very easy to set up and enroll your devices. With Apple devices, you can actually purchase the devices directly from Apple and already have them enrolled in your Systems Manager network. We have that partnership set up. So the other app here is the Meraki Dashboard app. So highly recommend you guys check this out, especially once you get your free AP set up at home. Download the Meraki Dashboard app. It's very, very cool. We spent a lot of time making the mobile experience of the dashboard very useful, and I use it all the time, in fact. So great app. Definitely recommend checking that out. But you basically add this into the network here, and once you have these added into the app management system here, you can select, simply select any of these apps and say push, and you can say push to all or push to missing. All this would do is push out that application to every device that you have enrolled in Systems Manager that it applies to. The other thing, like I said, you can push out settings So one that comes to mind, like I was talking about earlier, the Wi-Fi profile. If you've ever been part of an organization that they, maybe change the Wi-Fi password from time to time, like that happens, with schools, maybe they change the password every year just for that extra level of security. You can actually push out a Wi-Fi profile to those devices before you change the password, obviously. You can come in here, specify the name of the SSID, specify the security settings, and, push that. Once you save that settings, it will be pushed out to all of your devices. So now you can kind of go over to your network side, change the password. All of those devices will be able to automatically connect again. All right, so as you can see, there's a ton of functionality, especially in System Manager, but also with our other products I didn't have a chance to cover today. This is meant to be a pretty quick but extensive overview of the main features of each product. So I definitely encourage you guys to come back to the webinar portal, check out the other webinar offerings. We do have product-specific webinars, including Systems Manager. We also have pre-recorded ones posted there, so you could actually watch a pre-recorded webinar that was offered earlier. So definitely encourage you to check those out. You can get more information on each of these devices. But with that, let's go ahead and kick back over into PowerPoint and kind of wrap up the webinar here. So I hope you guys enjoyed the demo. That's obviously the most exciting part here. I like showing that part off because it's the easiest thing to show here. But let's wrap up with a kind of few ideas here. Hopefully you already know the answer to this question. Why cloud networking? Otherwise, my demo wasn't very good. But let's talk about to wrap it all up with this conversation here. So we talked a lot about what it's like to manage the networks remotely. So we believe that the increased manageability, and scalability generally leads to cost savings, right? So you can have a smaller IT infrastructure managing a really large network, and that's going to reduce your operational costs and lead to cost savings. So and you can see the solution really scales from, even if you're a small branch with a couple APs, security appliance, there's useful information that you can gather about your network and in the control that you can get over that network. And that also relates to extremely large campuses, right? So it's a one-size-fits-all solution there. So we're also solving new IT challenges, right? So in this BYOD environment, everyone has an iOS or Android device, and they're bringing it and they want to connect to your network, right? So we're giving you that integrated device management solution. You can see all of the clients that are connected. You can see all the applications they're using, and then we also give you that granular control of the network with our group policies. You can set up, what applications you want to allow through, etc. I didn't get to show it during the demo there, but we also have traffic shaping, right? If you want to throttle certain types of traffic down, we have layer 7 firewalls to if you want to block certain types of traffic. So it really allows you to customize the experience for these BYOD environments. New business applications. So you have companies like Square coming in and putting these credit card processing systems on the iOS devices, Android devices. Obviously, to process financial information like that, you need a secured connection, a PCI compliant connection. So we also we allow you to have that PCI compliant wireless, but also have guest access at the same time. We have all the security built into the access points to handle that. Finally here, the layer 7 application information. So you saw all the applications that were being used. You can see that you can see when a high amount of your traffic is Netflix traffic, etc. And we give you all the granular controls to control what amount of resources that it can use. Last thing here is software as a service, right? So the cloud really is a software as a service, and we take that very seriously, right? All of these features that we talked about here, the user and device fingerprinting, content filtering, mobile application deployment, the layer 7 information, the application firewall there, WAN optimization, etc. These are all incremental updates to the dashboard. So these are updates that have come over time, and we do quarterly updates to the dashboard. So you're always going to get access to the new features. Anytime we release new features, it's not like we're going to ask you, for new licensing or anything like that. Once you have your cloud licenses for the devices, you'll have access to all of our new features that are coming out. All right, a few case studies here. So the first one is Nespresso, and their goal was to use our products to really modernize their customer experience. So they did that by having these kind of mobile terminals. They can walk around, and no need for the customers to stand in line. They can just process their transaction there. So anytime you're talking about, again, the mobile credit card processing, you have to have a very secured wireless and a secured backend. So they have actually all of our products. They have security appliance switches, wireless, secured PCI compliant wireless. They utilized the intrusion detection and prevention on the security appliance to maintain that PCI compliance, and they even use Systems Manager to configure and track those mobile terminals. MIT, they're obviously everyone knows about MIT here, but one of their larger areas of campus have our wireless products there, and they actually utilize our automatic RF optimization built into each one of our access points. So this is actually a very nifty feature, especially when you're talking about a high density environment. You have a lot of APs in a very small environment, and those extra APs are needed to serve the number of clients in that area. But this automatic RF optimization feature, basically it's a process you kick off, and it scans for nearby APs, determines what channel they're on, and will update the channels accordingly so that you kind of reduce your co-channel interference from other APs. Motel 6, so they're a pretty large organization, right? They have 620 properties, 70,000 rooms, 35 to 40,000 users each week. Their entire network is managed from one single dashboard. They have a very small team that manages this. There's no dedicated IT staff at each one of their locations, so basically allows them to extremely lower their operational costs there. They also did the nationwide deployment to each one of these properties in just under 5 months, so it kind of speaks to how easy the Meraki solution is to deploy. Vector Media, so they utilize our site-to-site VPN, very, very easy for them to set up and monitor. They also utilize our WAN optimization feature. This is a feature that compresses files as they get sent across the VPN. This kind of reduces your bandwidth cost, and it's also very, very easy for them to set up and monitor there. Finally here, Mosaic Healthcare. They're a healthcare organization of, in 11 different states, 40 different facilities. Another great example of a really lean IT staff that's managing this entire infrastructure, but also a great example of HIPAA compliance, right? So they have, secure medical records being transmitted across this wireless interface, so they can not only have that HIPAA compliant wireless, but also guest Wi-Fi as well. All right, so our product family. So the first one is the access points here. This is the MR series. Several different models ranging from 802.11n single radio devices all the way up to 802.11 AC 3 radio devices. Our newer units, the MR18, 26, and 34, all have a dedicated third security radio, so it's just scanning your RF environment, looking for any wireless intrusion exploits, etc. It's also looking for any signs of interference, and will kind of automatically update channels based on that interference. We even have outdoor models that are a bit more rugged for use outdoors. So one thing to mention here, all of the features that we talked about in the dashboard, guest access, wireless intrusion prevention, traffic shaping, etc., is available on each one of those models. It's not dependent on what model there. The MX security appliance, so we have MX60 all the way up to an MX600. Again, all of the features that are available on the MX60 are available on the MX600, etc. So this zero-touch site-to-site VPN, WAN optimization, content filtering, intrusion detection and prevention available on each one of those models. And finally here, the switches. So a couple months ago, we announced a very large addition to this product line. So now we have switches that range from 8-port PoE, non-PoE, all the way up to 48-port 10-gig fiber aggregation switches. So with that in mind, feel free to check out meraki.cisco.com/products. There you'll find a breakdown of each one of these products and their capabilities, link to all the technical specifications, etc. Last one here, Systems Manager, 100% free. I forget if I mentioned that or not. 100% free. It works on any vendor's network. It's not like you need Meraki gear for this to work. It's not like you have to be connected to a Meraki access point, otherwise it's not free. No, it works on any vendor's network. You can sign up today at meraki.com/SM and start playing around with all that functionality. So if you want to try something out for free, so this is in addition to the free AP. That free AP that you're getting, that's yours to keep. This is if you want to try out maybe a different model of access point, or maybe you want to try out a security appliance, or try out a switch, etc. We have a dedicated free trial support team. They'll reach out to you once your gear arrives, and they will help you get it set up, integrated, tested, etc. I'm actually part of the free trial support team, so that was my little plug for myself there. So definitely encourage you to check that out. You can talk to your rep about the trial process, or check out meraki.com/eval and have the great benefit of talking to me for an hour while I help you get your gear set up. So definitely encourage you to check that out. So with that, thank you all for attending today. I'm going to pause for just a moment here to take a look at kind of the more common questions, and I'll be back. All right, so one question here about site-to-site VPN with Meraki and other vendors. Yes, we can do site-to-site VPN with other vendors. We have excellent guides on our documentation website, which is kb.meraki.com. You can search in there for your vendors, and we have guides for ASAs, whether you're doing it with ASDM or on the command line there for 2811 routers, for Sonic walls, for Junipers, etc. We have excellent walkthroughs there on the Phase 1, Phase 2 parameters and how to set up those links, but yes, we do support that. So another question here was, if you send out an AP to a remote location, does it need to get a DHCP address to reach cloud? So say if you're not running DHCP at your remote site, you do have the ability to set a static IP. You can do that from the local configuration page of the access point. You can also do it within Dashboard. If you get it connected up and you can get it temporarily on DHCP so it can get out to the cloud, get an IP address, get out to the cloud, then yes, you can get and do it from Dashboard, or yes, you can do it from the local configuration page of the access point. Another question here about bandwidth caps. So yes, you can, for instance, on the security appliance, you can do a global bandwidth cap. So you can say no matter what traffic is going through here on the LAN, etc., I'm going to throttle that traffic down to a certain megabit per second or kilobit per second value. On the access points, you can actually do a per SSID or per client bandwidth limit. So per client would limit every single client. Per SSID would limit every single client as long as they're connected to that SSID. So if one client was connected, they'd have the full per SSID limit, but if 10 clients were connected, they'd share that per SSID limit. So yes, there is bandwidth caps that can be put in place. Another question here is, if you like the eval gear, can you buy it? Yep, you can. Your rep will kind of handle all that for you. Another question here about, is the administration and management all done via the dashboard, or is there a command line interface for the devices? Nope. All the configuration management information is displayed in the dashboard. There is no command line functionality. So a lot of questions here, about pricing, etc. Definitely encourage you to talk to your rep about that. Unfortunately, we're not the best folks to offer up that information. But when you contact your rep to confirm your shipping information, you can go ahead and ask any of those kind of sales-based questions. Another question here about 802.1x authentication. Yeah, so each of the access points can authenticate with your radius server, right? So we have excellent setup guides there on our knowledge base as well. Basically, you can put all your radius settings into dashboard. The host, the secret port information, all that stuff goes into the dashboard, and then all you need to do on your radius server is add the access points as radius clients, and then they'll be able to pass those credentials back and forth to your radius server. Another question here about, is there a bandwidth cap for applications? Yes, we have traffic shaping rules that you can put in place. In those traffic shaping rules, you can select specific applications, specific ports, specific host names, and put bandwidth caps on that as well. So with that, folks, it looks like we were able to answer most of the questions. If anyone we did not get a chance to answer, I do apologize. We kind of ran out of time here. They will be sent over to your rep. So with that, thank you all for attending today. I definitely encourage you to check out more of the webinars, and have a great rest of your day.